The gods decide that Enkidu must die because they killed Hubaba and Gugulana, the heaven bull, despite the protests of Shamash. Enkidu falls ill and reminisces about the primordial and his carefree life and reviles the culture he was introduced to, but in the end regret his curses. For 12 days, Enkidu's condition worsens. Finally, after a lament that he could not meet a heroic death in battle, he dies. Gilgamesh clings to Enkidu's body and denies that he is dead. Gilgamesh mourns for Enkidu and calls mountains, forests, fields, rivers, wild animals and all of Uruk to mourn for his friend. This goes on for 12 days and nights, while Gilgamesh accepts Enkidu's death when a worm emerges from the corpse's nose. Reminiscing about their adventures together, Gilgamesh cuts the hair and his clothes with sorrow. He commissions a funerary statue and provides funerary gifts from his treasury to ensure that Enkidu would have a favorable reception in the realm of the dead. A great banquet is held where the treasures are offered to the gods of the underworld. Gilgamesh wanders the wilds ascetic, wearing animal skins, mourning for Enkidu. Now fearing his own death, he decides to seek out Utnapishtim and learn the secret of eternal life. Utnapishtim is the corresponding Noah of the Bible and Deucalion of the Greeks. Among the few survivors of the Great Flood, Utnapishtim and his wife are the only people granted immortality by the gods. Gilgamesh crosses a mountain pass at night and meets a herd of lions. Before sleeping, he prays for protection to the moon god Shin. Then, waking from a outraging dream, he kills the lions and uses their skins for clothing. After a long and dangerous journey, Gilgamesh reaches the twin peaks of Mount Mashu at the end of the earth, where the twin gates of Shamash are located, the east and the west. He comes across a tunnel which no man has ever entered, guarded by scorpion men. Finally, their leader allows Gilgamesh to pass. It passes under the mountains along the road of the sun. In total darkness, he follows the road of 12 double hours, managing to complete the journey before the sun overtakes him. He arrives at the Garden of the Gods, a paradise filled with decorated trees. Gilgamesh meets Siduri, the king's daughter of the sun Shamash, which she assumes to be a murderer or a thief because of his unkempt appearance. Gilgamesh tells her about the purpose of his journey. She tries to dissuade him from his quest, but eventually takes pity on his plight and sends him to Ursanabi, the only ferryman who has been given the privilege of crossing the deadly waters unscathed of the abyss and meet the immortal Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh, out of spontaneous rage, destroys the stone materials that Ursanabi keeps with him. Gilgamesh tells his story, but when he asks for help, Ursanabi informs him that he has just destroyed the objects that can help him cross the waters of death, which are deadly to touch. Ursanabi orders Gilgamesh to cut 120 trees and shape them into poles. When they reach Utnapishtim, he is upset and he was not waiting to be visited by another mortal besides the ferryman. Gilgamesh tells his story, asking for his help to conquer immortality too. Utnapishtim reprimands him, stating that fighting the common fate of men is futile and diminishes the joys of life, while he tells him that he experienced the flood himself, that he was saved together with living beings of all kinds, and that he was anointed as God. Gilgamesh asks Utnapishtim how he obtained his immortality. He explains that the gods have decided to send a great flood to purify the human race from sins. To save Utnapishtim, the god Enki, son of the supreme god Anu, told him to build an ark. He gave it an exact dimensions and sealed it with tar. His entire family came aboard along with his craftsmen, and he took every kind of the animal kingdom, a male and a female. Then a fierce storm broke out which made the gods terrified to recede into the heavens. Ishtar mourned the great destructions of mankind, and the other gods wept beside her. The storm lasted 6 days and 6 nights, after which all human beings became clay. Utnapishtim tearfully watched the destruction. The ark rests on a mountain and leaves a dove, a swallow, and a raven. When the raven fails to return, he opens the ark and sets free its inhabitants. Utnapishtim offers a sacrifice to the gods, who smell the taste and gather around. Ishtar swears that she will never forget the shiny necklace that dangles around the neck. She will always remember this time. When Enlil, the god of Gea, arrives, angry that there are survivors, Ishtar condemns him for inciting the flood. Enki also accuses him that it was unfair to punish all of humanity. Enlil blesses Utnapishtim and his wife and rewards them with eternal life. Eternal life was a unique gift. To prove this, Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 6 nights. Gilgamesh falls asleep, and Utnapishtim instructs his wife to bake a loaf of bread every day he sleeps, so that he cannot deny his failure to stay awake. Gilgamesh, who seeks to defeat death, cannot even defeat sleep. Gilgamesh continues to bleed to make him immortal. Utnapishtim, however, turns to Urshanabi and notices him because he put another mortal in the boat and decided to banish him once and for all. After instructed Urshanabi the ferryman to wash Gilgamesh and to dress him in royal clothes, they depart for Uruk. As they leave, Utnapishtim's wife asks her husband to offer a parting gift. Utnapishtim is convinced and tells Gilgamesh that at the bottom of the sea there is a plant that will make him immortal. Gilgamesh, tying stones to his feet so he can walk at the bottom, he manages to get the plant. Gilgamesh asks if the plant has the ability to revive, and in a model act of altruism, he says that he will first take it to the elders, and with them the beginning will be made. The two embraced the couple and made their way back. When Gilgamesh and Urshanabi stop to drink water, a snake appears and steals the plant and leaves shedding its skin. Gilgamesh weeps for the futility of his efforts, for he has now lost all possibility of immortality. He returns to Uruk, where the sight of its massive walls prompts him to commend this enduring work to Urshanabi. Of the 3,000 verses of the 12th tablet, very few survived, as it was completely shattered. From the lamentations of these verses, it seems that he was recording the inevitable death of Gilgamesh, the heartbreak of the citizens, the funeral rites on his honor, and the tragic farewell to their leader. Another variant of the 12th plate has survived, which however is opposite with the flow of the epic. Enkidu is still alive, even though he died earlier in the saga. Alternatively, it has been suggested that his purpose is to explain to Gilgamesh the various fates of the dead in the afterlife. According to this version, Gilgamesh says to Enkidu that 2 important personal items of his gave fallen into the underworld, and he asks him to bring them back. Piku and Miku, gifts from the goddess Ishtar. Probably the Piku was some kind of drum, and the Piku its beater. He told him he must go without clothes, unadorned and unarmed. Enkidu, however, did not listen to him, and the underworld kept him. Gilgamesh prays to the gods to give him back his friend. Of the gods, Enki and Shamash decide to help. Shamash makes a crack in the earth, and the spirit of Enkidu leaps out of it. Gilgamesh asks Enkidu to describe the underworld to him. Enkidu gives him the tragic description. The gods finally decide, instead of immortality, to give Gilgamesh the kingdom of the underworld.